In the last episode, we ended up cleaning up this search model quite a bit by using named scopes. But one thing I don't like about this find method is that we're resetting this local scope variable each time, because the way named scopes work is it returns a new scope each time you call the method. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we had a bang method variation of named scopes, which we could call and have it effect the scope in place, the current scope object, instead of just returning a new scope. And that way we could also use the returning block and clean this up a little bit more. There we go. To me, this looks like a much cleaner solution, and I really want to try to aim for this code here. But we have a problem, and that is currently the Rails framework doesn't support a bang method on named scopes. But that's no problem. We can just try to add it and then contribute a patch to Rails, because I think it'll be a really great addition. I covered contributing to Rails in episode 50, but since then Rails has moved to Git, and things have changed a little bit, so this will be a good overview of what's changed in moving and contributing to Rails using Git. So first I'm just going to clone the Git repository into my local. Now I could just clone this directly into the Rails project, but here I think it's a bit cleaner. I prefer to just keep it as an external project, more of a central location of where I can contribute to Rails. Another thing that's changed is that Lighthouse is now used for the ticket tracking. So if you just go to rails.lighthouseapp.com and then click on the Ruby on Rails project, then you can get there. Also, I encourage you to read the documentation here down at the bottom right, especially the one on contributing to Rails, because this has some really nice information that'll help you get started in contributing. So we're all done downloading our Rails source, so let's just hop into that directory. And the first thing you want to do is just to run your tests to make sure they all pass before you try to add any additional functionality. So let's do that by running rake test. This will just run the full test suite, the entire Rails repository. Now you'll likely get an error that looks like this somewhere along the test being run. And this is actually just telling you it can't connect to the MySQL database because we haven't actually set it up yet. So let's do that real quick so we can get these MySQL tests running. Okay, to do this we can just run MySQL, log in, and then create a database first called Active Record Unit Test. And we actually need to make a second one, Active Record Unit Test 2, and we also need to grant privileges for the Rails user, localhost. This way Rails will be able to log in into this database and just run the tests on it. So to run these tests, what we can do is just hop into our Active Record directory, and then in here we can run rake test MySQL. This will just run just those tests so we can see quickly if it's working. Now when that's done, you may get this one failing test, and I've run into this just because I find it happens when you start off with a clean, fresh new database. So because the database isn't fully populated. So just to get around this, every other test, just run the test suite again, and I find it clears the problem because it just happens on the first run. Alright, and when that second run's done, you should see all tests passing. So now we're good to go to add our functionality. And what we want to do is always create a separate branch from our master branch. Right now we're in the master branch. Let's make a separate branch to add our additional functionality in. This is one of the cool features of Git. It's just very easy to check out other branches. So we can run git checkout, and let's call it named scope with bang. Actually, if we add the -b option here, which I forgot, it'll actually create the branch because that branch didn't exist before, and then check out into that branch. Okay, so now if we open this up in TextMate, we can edit to our heart's content and add the functionality we want. Now we can open up the files dealing with named scope. So if we just do a search for named scope, we can see that there's a couple files here. And so Rails has actually just broken this down into the named scope functionality into these modules in here, into these files. Now we can just start on named scope and just add the functionality we want directly into here, but it's much better to start with a test. Do test first development, start with a failing test, and then implement the functionality just to make sure it's not already implemented and that you're actually creating something working. So let's just add a new test down here at the bottom. I'm just going to paste this in and this is what we want to happen. So let's try saving this and running our tests to make sure they fail. Now we could just run rake test MySQL again, but here we can actually just specify a specific test file to run. This way it'll go a lot quicker. So here we can say we want to run our test cases. It's called name scope test. Specifying that test will run that test singly, and we can see now that we have a failing test. So this is good. This is what we want. Now we just have to implement our code to pass the test. Okay, so now we can open up that name scope file, and it's actually down here at the bottom of the file where we have this method missing colon. This is the functionality that we want to change so it responds to a method with the bang, the exclamation mark at the end of it. So I'm just going to paste in the code here to do this, and I just need to change one more thing up here in this list of methods. I need it so that it doesn't try to override the dupe method with the arrays duplication method. So those two changes should implement this functionality that I want. Let's try it out. So I'm going to rerun this test, and now it all passes. So we've successfully implemented our change to make this test pass. Now we can use the bang method on name scope. Oh yeah, one more thing here. Don't forget documentation if you're adding any kind of features or functionality. So what we can do is just paste in some comments into here which explain our new feature that we just added. Alright, I think we're all done. Let's just commit our change. I'll call it name scope with bang. And then what we want to do here is check out our master branch. And actually I should go to the root here and make sure that there hasn't been any changes. So we can do git pull, just make sure that no additions have been added, and it looks like there has been since our last checkout. And then what we can do is go back into our other branch, name scope with bang, and then do a git rebase master here. And what this does is basically just reapply the changes that were made since we last did our checkout of the repository. So now our commit's basically added to the last commit that was made, and now we can format our patch. So to generate the patch, you do git format patch, and then to the master branch, since we're currently in our name scope branch, and then do std out. And then you could specify the file you want to put it into. So we say name scope with bang.diff. Now let's check it out. And it looks pretty good. Has our documentation added there, has our new additions there, and then it has our test. So that's all of the changes we made. Looks good. If you notice here that this is actually in the format of an email, which is somewhat unique to Git patches. The cool thing about this is that it separates each commit as a separate, basically, entry into here. So if you make multiple commits, those will be included into the patch. So if anyone imports your patch, it will appear as multiple commits that you made, which is good sometimes. But usually, if you're contributing to Rails, it's best to just make one commit and send that as a patch if you're just making one addition. So the last thing we need to do is just submit a ticket to Lighthouse with our patch. So let's call it name scope with bang. Paste in a nice little description. Select our patch file. And then just add a few tags here. And I think that looks good. So now we just click create ticket. And there we go. Now we have our patch on there, and for everyone to try out and +1 it if they want to. So now if you want to try out this patch and apply it to your project, how could you do that? It's really pretty easy. So let me just go to the attachment link here. Let's copy it first. And then you just go to some directory where you have the Rails Git repository cloned, and make it's best to put it in a new branch. So let's do a git checkout -b this time, named scope with bang. And now to apply that patch, we just need to pass it on into git am. And this will just check out the patch and apply it directly to this branch here. So just load the page in our browser after we start the server, and it works. So this is using the code that we wrote at the beginning here of using the bang method in our scopes. So this is how you can make a new addition into Rails and apply it as a patch into Lighthouse. I encourage everyone to get more involved in contributing to Rails and any other open source projects. A great way to do that is to just subscribe to the Ruby on Rails core mailing list and just check out the different patches that people are adding to Rails, and try them out and just comment on them and add some feedback. And then you can start getting into contributing patches on your own too. It's a great way to get more involved in the community. This episode is exclusively sponsored by Peepcode Screencasts. Please visit peepcode.com to find high-quality screencasts and PDF mini-books on Ruby on Rails.